This is the 8th lesson in a big series where I'm teaching the top 25 jazz standards for guitar players. If you're interested in playing jazz guitar at all, then you are in the right place. There's a link to a playlist of this entire series in the description. Please watch the first video at some point because I explain a lot more about how this series works and how it's structured. The song we're learning today is number 8 out of this list, and the song is Summertime. If you're here to just learn the chords or just learn the melody of Summertime, just use the timestamp links in the description to go straight to the section that you're looking for. You can practice everything you learn here along with a custom Summertime backing track that I made for you with me comping so you can feel like we're jamming together, and there's a link to that backing track in the description. Here's what we're going to cover in this lesson. First, I'll tell you about the song Summertime and why it's worth learning. Then I'll teach you the melody by clearly demonstrating on the guitar with notation and tab on the screen. I'll teach you the Summertime guitar chords by demonstrating both the easiest chord shapes and the most common chord shapes for this song, all with chord diagrams on the screen. I'll teach you these scales you can use to improvise over Summertime, all with scale demonstrations and diagrams and everything you need on the screen as well. I will also demonstrate chord tone soloing over this song, and every lesson in this series includes a unique piece of advice for how to truly internalize a jazz standard, and I'll share that. I'll give you a listening recommendation for the song, specifically a guitar listening recommendation. And lastly, I'll give you a free PDF that is very useful for helping you improve your jazz guitar playing and for playing over this song. Summertime is one of the most well-known jazz standards ever written. It was composed by George Gershwin in 1934 for the opera Porgy and Bess, with the lyrics by DuBose Hayward. Even though it originated as an aria, which just means a featured solo piece in an opera, it quickly made its way into the jazz world, and since then it's been recorded by hundreds of artists across every era and style, from Ella Fitzgerald and Louis Armstrong, Miles Davis, John Coltrane, even artists like Willie Nelson, and a popular version by the band The Zombies. The melody is hauntingly simple and it is instantly recognizable to almost everybody, and the chord progression can be simple or complex. People simplify it depending on the interpretation, and we are going to stick to the harmony from the original composition for our version, which is something that I always like to do and that I recommend doing when possible. Just like All of Me or Fly Me to the Moon from earlier in this series, Summertime is one of those rare tunes that jazz fans and non-jazz fans both know and love, so it's a great one to have ready at your fingertips. Let's jump in and learn the melody. The melody is so simple. I just want to point out one thing because we're looking at this here. There's no accidentals. It's all in the key of A minor, which is the same scale as C major, but it's even simpler than that. It's all A pentatonic, A minor pentatonic, except for one note right here, this B. All A minor pentatonic, and it's not even playing the G from A minor pentatonic until here. So it is, or until right here. So super, super simple lyrical melody, and the harmony is what makes it so haunting. We'll talk about that obviously when I show you the chords and when we talk through the chords. Just wanted to point that out. It's just good to look at it and get an overview. Be like, what notes are in this? Okay, that is a special note right there when it goes there, and you can hear it. That's a really quintessential moment in the song when that B note happens and this E7 chord happens. And the rest of it is just kind of this floating pentatonic sound, yet with the harmony very kind of crunchy and haunting behind it. But let's go into showing you the melody with tabs. Now I'll play you the Summertime melody, and I encourage you to use this section to practice along with my demonstration until you have it down. There will be guitar tab and notation on the screen as I play, so you can see exactly where on the fretboard I recommend first learning how to play this melody. Here it is at 100 beats per minute. Classic songs, especially songs that have orchestration in the original composition, have counter melodies in them that are part of the accompaniment. A counter melody is a secondary melody that's played simultaneously around the main melody, around the more prominent melody, but often in a way that contrasts or complements it, adding depth or interest to it, over to the overall musical texture, but not part of the main melody. Like the counter melody in this is not something that the vocalist sings. So therefore it's often taught, or on lead sheets you don't get the counter melody. So I just want to quickly show it to you. This part here that goes da 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 da, right there, that is the E7 chord. Okay, da 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 da. That melody note is the 5th of E7. Okay, and then this counter melody goes da 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 da. I just want you to know about it, and we'll play it with the accompaniment. You'll hear me do it in the comping on my backing track too. So da da da. So this is the root E. So the chord is E there. So you can go from the root E, da da da, 3 notes down chromatically, 3 notes total, da da da, and then from the whole step up for me, da da da. So pretty easy to remember, right? Find any E anywhere. Find any E. And there's your counter melody right at that spot. Okay, and I'll show you how to do it with chords after we talk about playing the chords. Just wanted to teach you that counter melody because it's very often not played, and it would be awesome if you know about it and you play it when you play this song. Okay, the chords are really interesting because this song is so popular and so ubiquitously played that it has so many versions harmonically. A lot of times you'll hear people play it with just a pure A minor, even triad, or A minor 7 for these 4 bars. So it kind of feels like a minor blues that then goes to this. Kind of feels like a minor blues anyway, but it's not. But the original score has this A minor 6 and then this E9 over B. Now that's actually, it sounds like it's quite a change there, but if you heard in the intro or in my comping, it's really just the exact same structure moving up a whole step, which is really cool. I'll obviously show it to you on the guitar here in a second. So these are small because they're kind of optional. You can just play this as A minor 6 or even A minor 7 the whole time, but I very much prefer to get this color of it that has the A minor 6 up a whole step to the E9 over B. So the root movement is moving from A to B, and the structure above that is actually the exact same structure, which again, I'll explain on the guitar in just a moment. That's pretty much the only significant thing to mention here. Look what we have here. We have a D9 sharp 11. Well, in the last video in this series that we did Take the A Train, and D7 sharp 11 was an important identifying chord in that song and in that progression. Well, and in that lesson too, I said you can say D9 or D7. The 9 doesn't really need to be there. However, we have an E in the melody, and that's why I say D9, because I like to, if it's really clearly in the melody, I'll put that in the chord. Otherwise, I'll just say, yeah, of course you can add a 9 anytime you want. I talked about that in the last lesson. So the rest of this here is just kind of pretty functional harmony stuff, like a minor 2-5-1 into A minor. And we're talking a lot about 2-5-1s and that kind of thing in this whole series. But this interesting progression here, very unique, that we have in the main 4 bars, and then it comes back again here. That is the coolest part about this. So let's jump onto the guitar and I'll show you. So here's an A minor 6 chord. It's the one I'd recommend playing. The original score is actually in B minor, and the voicing is this. This is 1, 5, 6, flat 3 of B minor 6, and that is the exact voicing in the original score. And then it goes up a whole step, and then down. So the exact same structure and voicing, yet the chords are interpreted as, and I'm teaching all the songs in the key they're most commonly played in, not in necessarily their original. So this is most commonly played in A minor, so that's why I'm teaching it in that. Well, let's look at it back in A minor then. We have the root of A, we have the 6 of A, we have the flat 3 of A, and we have the 5th of A. This makes an A minor 6 chord. It's a minor triad with a major 6 or a natural 6. Okay. Now if you move that up a whole step, well, you'd say, why is that not B minor 6? Well, it is. You could call it B minor 6, but it's harmonically functioning as the 5. So it's like we have a 1 chord, 5 chord, 1 chord, 5 chord, which is very common type of elongation harmonically. Now, this is, if we think of it as E, this is the 5 of E. Okay, so it's an inversion of an E dominant 7th chord. This is the 3rd of E7. This is the flat 7 of E7. And this is the 9 of E7. Oh, so it very much is E dominant 7 with a 9, but with the 5 in the bass. So it's E9 over B. So A minor 6, E9 over B. I like to do it with play the bass note, then the chord on top. Okay, so any voicing of A minor 6 anywhere, this voicing, you move it up a whole step. You get that. This voicing, move it up a whole step. You get that other chord. Here's a voicing. Okay, that one I showed you from the original score. You can play it way up there. Okay, so just wanted to point that out. Now I will just show you actual chord shapes that you can play in 2 different ways. Now I'll play you 2 different versions of the Summertime Guitar chords. I'll play you each chord once each time a chord changes, and I'll show you the chord shape diagrams on the screen. I encourage you to practice along with these demonstrations as you're working on getting the chords down. First, I'll play you the chords using the simplest chord shapes possible. These are often called shell voicings, and they are widely used in jazz. Here's that demonstration at 100 beats per minute. Now I'll play you the most common guitar chord shapes for summertime. These have an extra note in them and they fill out the sound a little more. This demonstration is also at 100 beats per minute. Let me explain a couple of my choices there. You know about these 2 already, so that's pretty clear. That's half of the progression already. D minor 7 is just normal, F7, F major 7 is just normal. This E7 here, I'm on measure 7 right here. And then I'm going to this E7 flat 13. Now I've said this before, but flat 13 and flat 9 indicate the same chord. You can, if I see flat 13, I very often will play this. Especially I would typically play this to this. This E7 with a flat 9, because if it says flat 13, it means flat 9 is also there. If it says flat 9, it means flat 13 is also there, unless it's otherwise indicated. You can have a chord, of course, with natural 9 and flat 13, but it would have to tell you that. Why am I avoiding the flat 9 here then specifically? That's because in the melody, da, boo, ba, the melody really is leaning on that E sound, and I don't necessarily want to clash with it right there. Da, 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 da. So that just suits it so much better. So I'm going out of my way to go there to play a voicing that has the flat 13 instead of the flat 9. So that's why I'm doing that. And then the other thing I want to point out is that the D9 sharp 11 chord, beautiful voicing for it here, root, sharp 11, flat 7, major 3rd. That's a D dominant 7, sharp 11 without the 9. And then, so I played 2 beats of this and then 2 beats of this, which is root, 3rd, flat 7, 9. So I played D7 sharp 11 and then D9 without the sharp 11, just to get both colors in there since I had room to. And that's something on the guitar that I lean on and utilize a lot, and guitarists do. We can't add a bunch of different notes. We have at the very most 6 notes, and often much less than that, because we're trying to fit in things on the, you can't fit things that are on the same string as each other, for example. So to get both colors in, I'm just using motion. I wanted the 9, I wanted the sharp 11. I couldn't play them both at the exact same time. I could have a voicing of that, but I wanted to specifically have that motion in there. So that's why I did that, even though there's 1 chord there. And I think that's kind of cool. Just wanted to point it out. Now let me show you this counter melody in the chords. So here is the da da, measure 5, D minor 7, da ba ba ba. So right there, you can play this voicing. Okay, this is a really cool voicing of E7 flat 13. This is the flat 7, this is the major 3rd, this is the flat 13, and this is the root. Okay, Okay, so I'm playing that to get the root on top. Okay, and then I'm going to play with my pinky a half step below on the next string. So then I'm going to play E7 shell voicing here, root, third, 7. Then I'm going to play the 9 from that same shape, then flat the 9 by barring here, and then play that same E7 flat 13 again. Really cool way to get that counter melody in there. Da 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 da. Pretty cool to fit that in, right, with those voicings. Just wanted to show you that. My comping tip for this lesson is the idea of taking a voicing that you have the bottom. This might seem really obvious, but we forget to do it sometimes, or forget to work out some really accessible extra voicings, and just having extra voicings is what can make our comping so much more interactive. Take the bottom string and move it up to the top string, and you instantly double all your voicings that have the bottom string, and even more than that, which I'll show you in a second. So this voicing here, you just have this voicing here. Obviously, same thing, up a whole step for that E9 over B. So if you have D minor 7 right here, just bring that bottom note. Ah, there's your minor 7, top 4 strings, like that. Okay, now what if you have like F major 7 right here? Well, if you have the root on a 5th string, the 5 is always here. 1, 5, 1, 5, 1, 5, 1, 5, unless it's a chord that has a flat 5. 1, 5, or a sharp 5. 1, 5. So if 5 is here, then you could just move that up and you get this. I don't often play that voicing because I don't like the doubled 5 in there, but it's perfectly appropriate and legitimate. So here's E7, 1, 5, 1, 5. Here's the 5 down here. Move the 5 up. You get just this. Not to mention you have that bass movement too to play with. So if you have E7 flat 13 here, oh, awesome. I love this voicing. That's E7 flat 13 with the root on the top, and all you did is move the bottom note up. So that's my tip for comping, for expanding your voicings, and we'll talk about rhythm in the series in the future, but having more voicings to jump to for the same chord is what can give you some interactivity and motion and melodic movement, and that's one fun way to do it. And just having even 2 options is huge. If you opted to stay on that chord for 4 measures, you'd want to move to something. So even jumping between those 2 is really effective. Next, I'll show you the scales you need to be able to improvise a solo over Summertime, and I will demonstrate and show you diagrams of all the scales in one specific overlapping position on the fretboard, which is where I highly recommend that you learn to improvise before worrying about mastering the rest of the fretboard. Here is an overview of the complete scales for this song. So here's a sheet that shows the complete scales. I say complete scales because I also usually show a simplified version of the scales where we get to kind of skate over things, but this tune, we don't have a simplified version. There's really nothing you can ignore or kind of float over without addressing it. What's really cool here is that all of the notes in this chord and this chord that are happening for 4 bars back and forth come from a melodic minor. Okay, that can sound a little weird. I really like improvising with a melodic minor over this. You also can use the A blues scale, even though that might clash with some of the notes. I mean, the blues scale often clashes with notes even just in the blues, and we like the sound of it. So the A blues scale, and if you want to just play the A natural minor scale, which is the same thing as the C major scale, that all kind of works on here. A melodic minor is the structure, though, that these notes officially come from. So it's really fun to use that, and it's a great excuse to work on melodic minor because we tend to neglect that. But feel free to just kind of treat it as typical minor also, and a mixture of all of those things will sound fantastic. This chord comes from the key of C major. This chord comes from C major. Here's E7, the 5 of A minor, so it's A harmonic minor. Flat 13 there doesn't change anything. Those are from the same scale there. And then this same business here, A melodic minor, C major, those are both from that key. This is a minor 2-5, and if you've been watching any other videos in this series, the minor 2-5, we're going to play harmonic minor of the key that it's pointing to, 2, 5, 1. Okay, the 1 is A harmonic minor is the scale that these come from. And just a reminder that scale chords can come from many different scales. This chord also exists as the 7 of C major. You could play C major there, but it also is the 2nd chord of A harmonic minor. So there's many options for scales. That's exactly why I'm showing them to you in this series, to kind of decode possibilities and really just show you my recommended go-to option. One of my core philosophies of playing and becoming fluent is to have one option that you really can master, and then you can get weird with it do other things, try all kinds of things after that. But if you don't have one thing or one, that's why I do one position on the guitar first. If you can't play fluently somewhere with something, then why are we trying to do a bunch of other options? And nobody else cares if you know a bunch of other options. They just care if you're playing and if it feels good and if the phrasing is nice and if the rhythm is good. So that's why I give you, if in doubt, use these things I'm telling you. And if someone else says, oh, that's not what, so-and-so played on it. Well, yeah, you can do all kinds of things on different chords, but these are options that work. That's also why I'm demonstrating them for you on the guitar so you could really hear it too, which I'll do in a second. So C major, that's where that chord comes from. You can also think of it as A natural minor, and then our harmonic minor there. Again, makes sense, right? Let's do the demonstrations. Last video in this series was Take the A Train. We also did A melodic minor for that. I love how these things come back again and again and again. It's what I said. If you work on standards and practice them actually deeply, really try to understand them, really go deep on them, then you're practicing thousands of songs at once. And it's just everything you practiced on that can come into play here. So here's A melodic minor. Okay, here's C major. This is for measures 5 and 6. Here's A harmonic minor. We've used this a ton in the series so far. And that is all the scales. Now I'll demonstrate improvising with those scales over the progression. Learning all these scales is important, and I'm showing you the scales because they are more confusing than chord tones. The chord tones are inside of the scales. If you know the scales and you know the name of the chord and the structure of the chord, the spelling of the chord, which you can just look up easily, way harder to just look up what scale you're supposed to play because there's so much interpretation involved, which is why I'm giving you those. But the chord tones, just the basic chord tones, 1, 3, 5, 7, of the chords, those are the notes that are actually in the harmony, and we want to be able to improvise with those. We want to outline those. When you combine being able to target and outline chord tones with the scale options around, plus whatever chromaticism you want to do, and the feel and phrasing, game over. That's everything that we are looking for and working on. So I'm going to demonstrate in all of the lessons in this series from now on, just a one time through the form of chord tone improvisation. So here's just a demonstration of chord tones only through that progression. In every lesson in this series, I give an internalization tip, which means we want to do something to internalize the music, go deeper with it, really understand it, really know it, expand our actual musicianship and our skills, that the things that apply to every single song. So my tip in this lesson is to learn the melody and be able to play it in octaves. You don't have to necessarily master it there. You don't have to, want to perform it there, but explore it there. Do the work of figuring it out. It's amazing fretboard work to work on playing the same thing, in this case, the melody, in various different ways. And earlier in the series, my number one tip in one of the lessons was just to know the melody better than anything, to know the melody so well that you never get lost in the form. Well, part of knowing the melody so well, or the way we get there rather, is just by practicing it in so many different ways, different keys, different strings, different scale forms, different everything. different harmonizations. So a lot of the internalization tips in this series are going to be different ways to work on the melody. Okay, so I played the melody in octaves in the very intro, and I just always make sure, do a little bit of work, even if you just do it once, to say, okay, I was playing it here. I can't play it. I could play the octave here, but if I want to play the upper octave, I have to move it over here. You just have to move. It's navigation, exploration of the fretboard. It makes you see it differently. Plus, it just sounds really cool. I happen to be using a hybrid technique right now where I'm plucking with the pick and then my fingers for the octaves. But you can just strum with a pick for the octaves, strum with your thumb. And I have a lesson on the technique of playing with octaves. I'll put a link to that in the description. So just simple as that. Work on being able to play the melody with octaves, even just for the one-time effort of being forced to figure out how that would work. And then even if you don't like it, you don't have to play it, keep it up and play it that way all the time. But we want to be doing that kind of head-scratching, difficult, challenging work to arrange things. And then you're going to know the melody and the guitar so much better. I'll give you my summertime guitar listening recommendation in 1 second, but first, obviously we're going over a lot of scales in this series, and this song and the last song in the series, Take the A Train, they both use the melodic minor scale in various ways. And so just what a great opportunity to work on actually using the melodic minor scale. In this case, A melodic minor, which works over so many of those chords in the song. And so what other opportunity are you going to have to just rip it on melodic minor for 4 measures and really try to get that down, try to use it, do some scale patterns through it, try to play something melodic with it? Well, I have a free printable parent scales PDF pack. That's what I call it. It's all the parent scales, 7 different scale types, 5 positions each of all of them, all the places that you can play them on the guitar, and the melodic minor scale is in there. So if you want to get down the various forms, or if you just want to play it in that one place where we're playing it for this song, please get that. It's nice to have some visuals in front of you when you are practicing, and that resource, those scale diagrams, I rewrote them out, but those scale diagrams are the exact ones that I learned from when I was learning guitar and when I was learning improvising and everything. And so I made that resource to give away because it was so helpful for me, and I went back to it all the time to review, how does that melodic minor scale work? How does that harmonic minor scale work? What's that scale form that I always neglect because I always play this other one that I know? So eventually I went back and just learned them, all of them thoroughly with a specific system that I use. But those are the diagrams. So go ahead and download that for free. There's a link in the top of the description, or you can go to soundguitarlessons.com/scales to get that for free. Listening to the songs we want to play is super important. Don't just try to work on a song if you're not listening to it and liking it. Why would you do that? So make sure you find one version that you can listen to and loop and just embed it into your brain. And I will always recommend a guitar listening version of the songs throughout this series. So my recommendation for summertime is Ted Green, the absolutely amazing solo guitar player. His album is just called Solo Guitar. And on that album, there is a medley. So it's it's 2 different songs, but the first portion of it is Summertime, and it's just absolutely gorgeous. If you don't know Ted Green's playing, that whole album is fantastic to listen to, but that Summertime version, even though he's just playing it for a portion of the song, is fantastic to just kind of soak in and listen to. Make sure you're listening to that or any other version that you love while you're working on this song. There's a link to a playlist of all of my listening recommendations in the description, both on YouTube and Spotify playlist. So hope you enjoy listening to those. Don't forget to use the backing track I made for you of Summertime. There's a link to it in the description. And make sure you're subscribed, because I can't wait to see you in my next lesson, where we'll do song number 9 of the top 25 jazz standards for guitar players, which is going to be Softly as in a Morning Sunrise. Hit that like button and please leave a comment and let me know if you liked this lesson. It really makes a difference and helps the video reach more people. Check out the description for all the links I mentioned and for how you can support the channel. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for watching. Take care and happy guitar playing.